If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Your support means the world and helps me bring more incredible stories your way. Today's story will draw you into a world where the boundaries between trust and temptation begin to blur. It's about one business trip, one unexpected twist, and a single moment that changed everything. What truly tests a person's boundaries? For me, it wasn't money or age or even relationships in the usual sense. It was something far more subtle, something that sneaks up on you quietly, until suddenly you find yourself standing at the edge, wondering if you've crossed a line you can never return from. I had been married for over 10 years. My life was stable, predictable, even comfortable, at least on the surface. But beneath that calm exterior, there were shadows I rarely acknowledged. Small, restless corners of my heart that stirred quietly, waiting for the right, or perhaps the wrong, moment to awaken. And for me, that moment was sparked by someone I never expected. Adrian. Adrian wasn't family, not by blood, not by law. He was younger, ambitious, full of promise, a rising star I'd been mentoring in the corporate world for years. When he first joined our firm, fresh from university, he was polite, careful with his words, maybe even a little guarded. Yet beneath that composure, I saw potential, a quiet fire that could take him far. Over the years, I had guided him, introduced him to people who mattered, and pushed him to take risks when he doubted himself. He respected me deeply, always did. But there was an invisible wall between us, one built of unspoken thoughts and careful restraint. He listened closely, yet his eyes always seemed to hold something back. That distance, that quiet tension unsettled me, and maybe that was exactly what made it so dangerous. The business trip to Chicago had been planned for weeks. Originally, my husband was supposed to come along. He often turned these work trips into little getaways for the two of us. But that morning, everything changed over breakfast. With steaming coffee cups between us, my husband looked up and said casually, "I won't make it this time. Something's come up. You'll handle it without me." My fork froze midway to my mouth. Without him? That wasn't how this trip was supposed to go. Before I could respond, Adrian cleared his throat softly. "If it's easier, I can stay behind too. The firm doesn't really need me there." But my husband shook his head. "No, you should go with her. You need the experience, Adrian. And honestly, she's the best person to learn from." I managed a polite smile, but inside, a knot tightened in my stomach. Everything about this trip suddenly felt different. As the weight of that decision settled over the table, I dared a quick glance at Adrian. He was already looking at me. Just a brief flicker of eye contact, no more than a few seconds. But in that brief moment, I felt something I'd spent years pretending not to notice. We were going to be alone. And somehow, I knew that meant more than I wanted to admit. The morning of our flight, the sky hung low and gray, the kind of overcast that feels like a warning you can't quite name. At the airport, Adrian walked beside me, calm as ever, carrying his own bag with practiced ease. Yet this time, something was different. His silence wasn't the same comfortable quiet I was used to. His movements were more controlled, more deliberate. I noticed his hands fidgeting, his thumb brushing over his palm as if he was rehearsing words he wasn't ready to say. And I felt it too, that invisible current between us, the kind that hums quietly beneath ordinary moments. The air felt heavier, charged with something neither of us dared acknowledge. We spoke only when necessary while waiting to board, but every silence seemed louder than it should have been. When we finally took our seats, he chose the window. I sat beside him, pretending to focus on the flight schedule. At first, our small talk was harmless. Details about the clients we'd meet, the meetings ahead, the weather in Chicago. But then, without warning, his voice lowered his voice, the tone shifting into something softer, more intimate. "Honestly," he said, "it's probably a good thing your husband didn't come." I turned to look at him sharply. "Why do you say that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even, though my heartbeat had picked up. Adrian gave a faint shrug, a small smile touching his lips. "Because you're different when he's around, like you're holding something back." The words hit harder than I expected. My breath caught for a moment. Avoiding something? How could he have seen that? The real fear wasn't in his question, it was in knowing that he was right. By the time our plane touched down, night had already fallen. Chicago's skyline glittered against the dark, 1,000 city lights shimmering like scattered stars. In the hotel lobby, the receptionist greeted us with a bright smile. "Your family suite is ready, ma'am." I blinked. "Family suite?" "Yes," she said cheerfully. A spacious suite with 2 beds. My stomach dropped. I'd assumed we'd have separate rooms. Space, privacy, boundaries. But the company had booked us together. Adrian stepped closer, calm as ever. "It's fine," he said easily. But somehow, his composure made the unease in my chest tighten. Was it really fine? The door opened to reveal a room far too luxurious for comfort. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glowing skyline. Soft carpets and 2 queen beds side by side, their white sheets pristine and far too close. Adrian slipped off his jacket and draped it neatly over a chair, loosening his tie with practiced ease. "Are you tired?" he asked, his tone casual. Why did such a simple question make my chest tighten? I turned toward the window, pretending to admire the city below. "A little," I managed, though my voice didn't sound as steady as I hoped. When I finally turned back, his eyes were already on me. Not just looking, but observing, studying. They were calm, steady, and dangerous. That was the moment I realized that the boundaries I had always trusted suddenly felt more fragile than ever before. Adrian sat on the edge of his bed, slowly rolling up his sleeves with a kind of casual ease that made me more nervous than I wanted to admit. He looked relaxed, but there was a certain sharpness in his eyes. A quiet awareness that told me he felt the shift between us just as clearly as I did. "I know this is technically a work trip," he said, leaning back on his hands, his tone light. "But it doesn't have to be all business. We could take a little time to enjoy ourselves, too." I raised an eyebrow. "Enjoy ourselves?" A faint smirk curved his lips. "The hotel bar downstairs. It's been a long day. You could use a drink. So could